There isn't anything better to have than a problem that's worth solving, like that's really worth solving, right? And so the more of that you take on, the more you have a reason to get out of bed in the morning, no matter what. I think I'm getting up, I'm trudging forward. Doesn't matter what I'm suffering from, I've got things that need to be done. They're necessary. And that gives you that sense of purpose that is the antidote to bitterness. You know, there's lots of different ways to interpret the world, and you can maybe even make a case that there's an endless number of ways to interpret the world. And the problem with that is that it kind of disorients you in terms of what you should be doing. But just because there's a very large number of ways to interpret the world doesn't mean there's a very large number of productive, meaningful, and sustainable ways to interpret the world. These people that you're comparing yourself to, you don't really know very well. What that means is that you see their shiny outside, but you don't see the reality of their life. Well, first of all, there's danger in just comparing yourself to others, period, because they're not you, and God only knows what struggles they had to undertake to get to where they were, or what burdens they're currently carrying that you're not aware of. But you can certainly contrast yourself with yourself, and that's a lot better. The possibility that you can make yourself slightly better on a continual basis is, I think that's something that's accessible to everyone. I think that's equivalent to leading a virtuous life.
If you do not listen to that thing that beckons you forward, you will pay for it like you cannot possibly imagine. You'll have everything that's terrible about life in your life and nothing about it that's good. And worse, you'll know that it was your fault and that you squandered what you could have had.
Always take into account the cost of what you're doing now, right? Because what people tend to think is whatever I'm doing now is risk-free, and here's a bunch of options. It's like, no. Whatever you're doing right now has all sorts of risks. You're just blind to them because you've habituated to them. They've become invisible.
So if you keep yourself in the fog, then you can't tell when you screwed up. Now that isn't so good because you're still screwing up. You're just too blind, self-blind to notice. Although in the short term, that's less painful. If you make your criteria for success razor sharp, then you know every time you screw up. But that's great because then you could fix it, or maybe you could adjust your damn plan. Either way, you can fix it. It seems to me you might as well make it the best one you could live in because you don't have anything better.
What you just heard was a quote from one of my personal heroes. He's a Canadian clinical psychologist and researcher, a University of Toronto professor emeritus, a best-selling author, and most recently, a well-respected, though controversial, public intellectual, Mr. Jordan B. Peterson. Now, I think he's getting to the point where most people have heard of him, and you may already have an idea of who he is. I'm asking that you maybe set that aside and consider his message without the pre-existing biases of our current polarized political culture. Because I'd like to speak about him as a brilliant thinker, because I believe his message is really important, that it aims to impart wisdom and speak challenging and difficult truths to a culture and a society and a generation that feels somehow lost. I also just think he's worth listening to. And regardless of your political preference, if you really listen at the core, Jordan Peterson has a message that is one of deep love for people, one with respect for people. And he has this constant theme that places importance on truth, on speaking truth. Because of this, I think that his message is for anyone who also values those things: love, respect, and truth. Jordan is qualified, but I also think he's properly motivated. to speak to our culture and modern society. And despite several misrepresentations, especially from more politically left-leaning individuals, his motivation is very clearly to help and not harm. So even if you disagree with some of the things that he believes, I think that there is a message for everyone within his greater body of work. And that message can be impactful in a very deep and meaningful way if you're open to it. Now, his books offer an array of practical rules for life and almost form a philosophy, if you will, that's substantiated by literature, logic, clinical experience, world history, or human history, by myth, statistical analysis, peer-reviewed research, and a deep understanding of people. Jordan Peterson has a genius of symbolic interpretation, and he's historically grounded with a diverse understanding of politics, ideology, clinical psychology, amongst many other things. His ideas always feel congruent with not only Christianity, which is what I believe, but several common themes amongst other major religious doctrines. And even before he made the distinction of believing in God, I think that message was embedded in his beliefs and his ideas. He encourages personal accountability and self-improvement and the greater good, the common good, through individual responsibility, because he recognizes how that has become more and more important. Now, I don't expect you to just take my word for it. The reality is, this Canadian professor posted his lectures on YouTube in about 2013, and his ideas attracted an audience. Now, he has grown into a best-selling author with over 5 million copies of his books sold. He has 5.4 million YouTube subscribers. And as of today, August 8th, 2022, his videos have amassed 422.7 million views. That's a lot. And that is according to a statistic tracking website that keeps track in real time of things like subscribers and views on YouTube. And it is linked in the description. Now, it's odd because I stumbled onto Jordan Peterson rather early in his public career, I guess you could call it. And I had no idea that he would become so politically polarized. Though that's really the deeply ingrained message that has been framed around him, especially for those with more liberal-leaning beliefs. And I'm really grateful that I connected to his ideas before they were twisted in that way, because until recently, I was actually a self-described almost socialist. I would always tell people, I'm practically a socialist. I'm so liberal. And perhaps I even had sort of an understanding of what being a socialist meant. Probably not. But the strange thing is that I listened to Jordan Peterson in the context of somebody who considered themselves a liberal thinker. And I considered him to be categorically apolitical, that his ideas were rooted in logic, not ideology. And I was able to see them without that cloud of ideological defense mechanism. In closing, I just want to reiterate that Jordan Peterson is one of my heroes, and that I feel his ideas cover an array of very important topics that are very, very relevant to almost anyone in modern Western society. And even in the case that you disagree with what he has to say, I encourage you to listen to understand. See, Jordan Peterson has endured all manner of personal hardship, and he's been open and addressed those with honesty and grace. He speaks to others with humility, and he embodies the same genuine desire to listen and understand that he asks others and encourages others to embody. That is to say, he practices what he preaches. He speaks truth to the world in a time where truth is utterly lacking. And he does it with a clear intention of making the world a little bit better place. His motive doesn't begin or end with callousness, the need to be right, or any other twisted, prideful desire. I believe deeply that he has an understanding and a love for humanity, and that he values the balance and logic and tradition, which are things that the world really needs right now. He wants to help people in all of our beautiful and complex imperfection. And while I don't agree with everything that he has to say, I respect him. And when he speaks, I too listen to understand. I encourage you to read his books or listen to one of his lectures, and to do so with an open mind. He has impacted the lives of millions, quite literally, including mine. Thank you.